Welcome back, everybody. My name's Tank, and this is episode 22 of the Back Lounge Podcast. If this is your first time joining us, this is my podcast. I am a touring guitar tech, for anybody that didn't know that, and I invite on artists, band members, other roadies, and anybody else, and we just have conversations about whatever. I try and keep this as casual as possible. I don't have questions prepped or anything like that. I just like to have people on and see where the conversation takes us. Now, if any of you are watching this on YouTube and I look kind of rough right now, it's because I am. I'm actually right now in the middle of packing to go on tour, and I just realized that I did not film the intro or outro to this episode yet, so we're going to do that really quick. Tomorrow morning, from when I'm filming this, I am flying out to New York City and meeting up with the band and crew from Powerwolf. I will be joining them on their first ever US dates. That's going to be really cool, man. I mean, I think I might be one of the only Americans on that crew. So to be with them when they experience the US for the first time is going to be really, really awesome, man. Right off the bat, we're doing New York City, Montreal, and then Worcester. And then they go back to Germany for some more of their own stuff. And then they come back and we do Dallas, Denver, San Francisco, Los Angeles. Cool stops along the way, man. And I'm really excited to be a part of this and go out there and guitar tech and work on some of those custom Framuses, man. That's going to be really cool. But, yeah, I am unfortunately a last minute packer for like everything I do. And I always feel stupid when I do this because, I leave in, less than 16 hours and I'm still trying to pack, and I haven't been on tour in so long that I'm realizing I don't know where these things are. And I had to dig around and find my passport a little while ago. So crazy, but I'm excited. But before I'm leaving for this tour, I wanted to get another podcast episode in. And for this one, we have the first person that is returning to the podcast. Chris Harms from Lord of the Lost will be joining us once again. Now, we had him on the podcast a while back. If I'm being honest, off the top of my head, I can't remember. Although I did just find it while I'm doing this, May of 2022. So it's been almost a year and a lot has happened for Lord of the Lost. The most recent thing that we saw is that they are one of the preliminary picks for Germany's entry into Eurovision this year, which is wild, because I even admit to Chris in this, I was surprised they were picked because Germany always plays it super safe. I mean, we all followed Electric Callboy last year when they were trying to get into Eurovision and they were not picked. So this is kind of a cool move for Germany to pick a band like Lord of the Lost to possibly represent them in Eurovision. And the preliminaries for that are on March 3rd, and the voting is for mostly German people. Like, they track the IPs and the phone numbers and stuff, but I know a lot of Germans listen to this. So make sure you get your vote in for the preliminaries for Eurovision. If it were my choice, and I'm not just saying that because Chris is on here, I'd vote Lord of the Lost all the way, man. So by the time this video comes out on YouTube, there will be a link where you can go vote for this stuff and check it out. And then the preliminary show again is March 3rd. But Lord of the Lost also dropped a surprise studio album at the end of 2022 with like 6 days lead time. They were like, hey, we have a new studio album coming out, which is wild because that's not how people do music marketing nowadays. And I bet a lot of people doubted it was going to work. Well, it worked. It went #1 in Germany. On top of that, they did some tour dates with Iron Maiden recently, and they're also going back out with Iron Maiden. They got along so well that they got invited again. This was just a fun conversation. Chris is one of those really loose people that I'm just comfortable with, and we can talk about a lot of ridiculous things, which we did. We get off the rails quite a few times in this, but we do talk about some really cool stuff. So before we get this started, just as a reminder, this podcast is available in video form on YouTube at my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/TankTheTech. But if you want to listen to the audio, if you're in your car or at the gym or at home or something like that, it's available on Spotify, Apple, Google, everywhere you can listen to podcasts. This is available. So there are multiple ways you can do it. But with all of that being said, let's just kick right into this one. Episode 22. I think it's 22. I am so disorganized today. We'll just say episode 22 of the Back Lounge Podcast. the first artist returning to the podcast for a second time, the Lord, Chris Harms. How are you doing?
Hello. Guten Abend.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
My German has probably progressed a little bit since I've talked to you last, even though I'm still not fluent, but
we never tried German, but we will try that one day. But I'm happy to be back, and it's an honor to be your first your first not one night stand. That's actually very nice. So cheers.
And what's cool for this is like we've already sat and talked to each other, so there's no awkward feeling each other out time. It's like we can just jump in and talk, and it's just fun, man. It's actually I'm really good at reading and writing German now. I haven't had practice with conversation yet because I haven't really been out. So the other day on Twitch, everybody was kind of like, well, you're going to practice when you're out, like Powerwolf and Electric Callboy. And I was like, yeah, but they're from totally different places. And I bet I'm not going to understand either of them because.
All right. The thing is, if you're not growing up like in the super little village somewhere in, I don't know, South Bavaria or like really far out, and if you're like my generation or a little younger or a little older, and so the guys in Powerwolf and Electric Callboy, they're a little like around my age. I think Electric Callboy a little younger, Powerwolf a little older, but all those guys, we all know how to speak like Hochdeutsch, like the plain German thing. So, and I talked to most of these guys, so it's like that's not gonna be an issue.
Yeah. Okay. Because Twitch was like, there's probably some terms I was asked. They're like, do you know your insults or your swear words in German yet? And I was like, not really. And I think they told me one good insult, which I'm not going to say it to anybody because I don't want to get slapped. But I learned Schweinehund the other day, and I was like, okay. I was like, what, pig dog? And they're like, yeah, it's kind of like when somebody's being lazy, I guess.
Yeah, like the term Schweinehund, pig dog, whatever, I actually never heard someone say it as an insult.
Really?
Or like, no, really not. Or like using it as an insult, but it's something, it's a common saying. If you are defeating your inner Schweinehund, your inner pig dog, that means that you stop procrastinating, or you kind of jumping over your shadow, or you're kind of come out of the closet and really do things, like it's like overcoming your inner, I don't know, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So it's like in like American English, I would say, like, if I actually felt like doing something today, I'd say I'd stop being a bum and get up and go do something. It's
totally that. It's in German you call, like, you really say like you're defeating it, so you're saying, or you're getting victory over it, so you say den inneren Schweinehund besiegen. That means like,
Yeah.
But I never ever, and maybe that's a regional thing, never heard anyone saying du Schweinehund.
Maybe I took that wrong then, because I was like, well, I don't know if I'm going to call somebody that because I'll probably get slapped. I mean, this is going to be like, when I'm out with the Powerwolf guys, they're having a lot of their normal crew out there. This is going to be one of those situations for me as a very outgoing, talkative person where I'm just going to have to keep my mouth shut and work because like they all know each other and they don't know me at all. So it's like,
I think, we just met online these couple of times, or like not right now from WhatsApp and sending back and forth messages or voice messages. So, but I think you are a kind of person people can open up to very easily. I think you're very like approachable and open and nice. I think that's not going to be a problem.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah. It's a funny thing to talk about on tour because when you're obviously familiar, but when you tour with people, you get to know people's personalities really quick, and not everybody always vibes. I have been on tours where everybody gets along, but then I've been on other tours where there's certain people that don't vibe with each other. And
I feel you.
and we were talking about this one time on Twitch, and somebody was like, I was joking, and I was like, there's usually one person on every tour that like everybody just has something against, and somebody was like, have you ever been that person? And I was like, probably. I mean, yeah, probably. Personalities just clash.
Maybe if you end up being a person, if you end up on tour and you think like, wow, this time there's not really this one person everyone hates, then it might be you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's, oh man. But yeah. It's always interesting getting on a tour for the first time with new people, because there is a sense of like, this will be the first time I'm going out in, since my daughter was born, and getting around a bunch of people that know each other and stuff like that. There is a little anxiety with that, where it's like that first day I'll probably be really feeling everybody out and stuff. But the thing that helps is that their tour manager is also the guy Patrick that handles Heilung and Elbeti. So I know him, so that'll be like my one person that I can at least go to right off the bat, because I know him. But it's gonna be fun, man. It's like their first time in the States ever. So like they were like, we have a WhatsApp group thread going, and I know one of them was like, yeah, you got to take us to all the good food spots. And I was like, dude, when you're in New York, we're just gonna be eating bagels and pizza, dude. That's it. Like, so. But
yeah, I can't wait. So I like I just told you before we started the stream, and I don't want to make people sad here, but I actually said that we're coming to the US this year, and we actually plan to come in April, but we cannot do it this time, not because of visa problems, which we had last time, but like right now we might just have been a little, or our booker might just have been a little too late. So we started planning the thing like half a year before, or a little more. And in this post-COVID thing where like everyone's touring right now, and you can't get a bus, you can't get a backline, I mean, you know it better than I am.
Yeah,
I do. Then I'm just explaining it to people. It was hard to even get half of the venues which we would have needed to make the tour, like to make it worth it. So, So what we're doing right now, and I can't promise anything, but we are trying to come next February and to stay like the whole February next year in the US. This is what we're working on right now. I can't tell you more right now, so the people out there, but yeah, that's the plan.
Yeah, that'd be so awesome. February, man, you're going to be coming at the coldest time of the year here. I mean,
I remember like the first time and the only time we've been to the US, like a little road trip. It was 2014, so yeah, so it's going to be 10 years after.
Wow, yeah.
We did like 3.5 weeks road trip, super small clubs, sometimes just 20 people showing up or no one, or I don't know. But it was one of the greatest experiences. And I think we started in Detroit.
Oof. Yeah.
It was like snow.
Yeah.
And it was February or January. And then we went in the shape of a fish. Like this through the country. So then we went through the Bible Belt to LA. Actually was like, I don't know, was super nice. I could only say it in degrees Celsius, not in Fahrenheit, but you could be there with the shirt,
Yeah.
And then
I'm good with both, so I could translate if you know the Celsius.
Oh yeah, it was like 20 Celsius. Okay,
so that's like 76 to 78 Fahrenheit. That's beautiful weather. Like, it's great.
It was really beautiful. Yeah. We were standing there with our feet in the ocean. And then we got back, and I think the last show, somehow the last show was New York, Brooklyn. And it was snow again, and minus 10 Celsius. It was fucking crazy.
So we're the second show of this tour I'm about to do with Powerwolf is in Montreal. And our tour manager just sent us the weather schedule. -27 Celsius. And it's supposed to be 10 inches of snow, which, let's see, an inch is 2.5 centimeters. So we're talking over 20 centimeters of snow.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be, I'm bringing my winter gear, but it's like, there are some tours.
10 inches is like that, right?
10? 10 would be.
Okay, you did get the joke.
Oh, sorry. I'm thinking too literal. Yes, I get the joke. I actually, it's funny you say that. I saw, I've never talked about something like this on the podcast. This is really wild news that I saw the other day. I saw a news article that said studies show that the average penis length has grown in the last 20 years.
Yeah, I just posted that today.
And I was like, how did they do this research? And they're like, well, they just asked people. I was like,
But the thing is, if only the average penis size is growing, what about people like me with an like over average size?
Yeah,
Is it growing as well?
Sometimes when I see these stories, I'm just like, which one of these scientists was like bored and was like, we should study this next?
Or maybe he looked at himself every morning like,
yeah,
wow,
yeah.
it seems to be bigger than yesterday night.
Yeah, there's an episode of South Park from a few seasons ago that was like that, where they're like, men were so angry that they had like an average sized penis that they convinced like the actual people that were in charge to be like,
oh,
okay,
yeah,
we're gonna change the average size so everybody feels better about themselves.
and they were like doing in school, they were like doing the math and like trying to prove
the TMI index.
Yeah. All right,
dude, it's so ridiculous, man.
Yeah, it makes me think of the other episode where they get all like huge balls.
Yeah.
Like a hibbity hop. Then all right.
My wife and I actually watched that the other day. It's one of my favorite South Park episodes.
For medicinal marijuana, and then he can't go through the door.
Yeah,
it's like, okay.
And it's like the whole episode was just a metaphor for like, all these laws are dumb. Can we just legalize it everywhere already? Done with this? Like, dude, that's such. I mean, it's so funny.
I mean, the social aspects of South Park or Family Guy or American Dad or like Simpsons, which might have been one of the first.
Yeah,
who did that? Maybe not as hard as South Park, but my son, he's 11 years old now, and he totally gets this kind of social criticism humor. So, and we just started watching Simpsons like a couple of months ago, and we're like going through all the season backwards now because he wanted to start with the newest ones. So now we're going backwards, and it's so funny because you see like there's a child growing up on the brink of being an adult. You know, with 11, it kind of slowly begins.
Mm-hmm.
So things change, and seeing that this weird kind of humor that they actually get it, because some people don't get it. For some people, it's just a cartoon, and they're like, you know, it's like, but if you actually like get it, it's really like, it's a lot of fun to watch these things now.
My dad and I watched Simpsons when I was a young kid, and South Park came out when I think I was about 9 or 10. And I remember when it first came out, to me.
How old are you now?
I'm 35. I'll be 36 soon.
Yeah. Okay.
So it came out, I think 1997 or 6 it came out. And I remember when I first started watching it, we were those young kids that were just, you know, they're saying dirty words, you know. But then as I got older and I watched the episodes again and stuff, I totally got everything. And I was like, wow, these guys have been doing this since they started, like the social commentary and like, you know, there are times where we've talked. I was like, I looked at my wife one day and I was like, how are they still getting away with some of this? And I think everybody has just gotten to the point where they're like, it's South Park. Like, you know, that's what it is. Like the latest episode that came out where they were making fun of Kanye West going off about Jewish people and stuff. I was just like,
I haven't seen that yet, but I remember the ones about the gay fish, but I need to. But when Simpsons came out, it came out in Germany, I think 1 year later. It must have been 1991.
Okay.
And I wasn't allowed to watch TV at a certain time of the day. So because I should finish my homework and blah, blah, blah. And then in the evening, I was allowed to watch some things. But Simpsons always came like in some time in early afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
And my sister had a TV. My older sister had a TV in her room, and her school day was longer than mine. So I always sneaked in that room, and it was a real old TV from my parents from the 60s or 70s, which was still black and white. So wow. I watched The Simpsons there for like 1.5 years, always like without my mother knowing.
Yeah.
I watched it. And then we moved from this city back to Hamburg, and we got this huge TV, and I was allowed to watch these things now. And I put it on, and I realized they're all yellow. And you know, there was no internet back then or something where you can look things up, or no stories and social media. It was like my only entry to the world of The Simpsons was that black and white TV.
Yeah.
And I didn't know they were yellow until we had this. Yeah.
So what was your reaction the first time you saw it in color?
I thought something was wrong with the TV, so I started to find the color settings. And, yeah.
Oh, that's great. It's wild thinking back because, like, you know, I was talking to my sister the other day about, my sister's 7 years younger than me, I feel like my generation is like the last one on that cusp of like when technology really changed. Because I remember nobody had a cell phone. We all used home phones, the dial-up internet, the huge giant tube TVs. Like, it's crazy how much everything has progressed. And when I talk to people that are in like their early 20s and stuff now, I'm just like, you know, some YouTubers that I know very well, like, you know, like Nick Nocturnal is like 25. And when I talk to him about music, his frame of reference with a lot of metal he listens to is, you know, newer stuff. So
yeah, sure.
In Flames is one of my favorite personal bands. I've been listening to them since the 90s. So when Nick says the new In Flames sounds like the old In Flames to him, he's talking about like 2006, 7. And I'm just like, wow. Sure. Like, you know, there's a whole decade and a half of music from them that you weren't even familiar with at all. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, I remember that, like, that things changed so quickly. My last year in school was 1999. And I had, like, in 1998, it was 12th grade. We have 13 grades until we, like, when we finished school. I had this first mobile phone, a Siemens mobile phone with a LCD display that big.
Yeah.
And then suddenly it was possible to write SMS, text messages with, like, I don't know, 130 signs or something for a price which would be like $2 or $3 right now. And then Matrix came in 1999, and in Matrix, Neo has this Nokia phone, this banana thing, you know, it was like, it opens like that. It has this slide thing to open. It was like, wow, there was the future. So I had this phone, and from there it started to evolve so fast. So I was like one of the first generations who learned how to write SMS without watching the display.
I was so good at that. Like, I know
to
get
get some
saying.
messages to someone else in the class. So we were like, and I could, like, you know, when A is press 1, B is press 2. I thought, I could write, like, without any mistakes.
Yeah, same. Because my first phone, I got my first phone in 2003. Because when I got a car, when I got my driver's license, my dad was like, I want you to have a phone just in case something happens. But I remember phones back then, the big deal was rollover minutes. So if you didn't use all your minutes in a month, they'd roll over to the next month and you can use them more. But text messaging was more expensive than calling back then. It cost money every time you sent or received a text. And it's like the only game we had on there was that old school Snake where you just use the 2, 4, 6, and 8 buttons to move it around. Like, those were the days, man.
but you know, when you talk about this whole generation of music, it's so funny that the young kids now, on the age of my son, as I said, he's 11, through certain movies and this whole retro thing, which kind of went from 80s to 90s to early 2000s now. So in certain kind of, I don't know, TV series for children, or movies or podcasts or YouTubers, they're using it. They're now all using this late 90s, early 2000s kind of music. So my son just came to me, was like, can we listen to some metal oldies? It was like, what do you mean by metal oldies? It was like, I show you, but you might don't know it. It might be too old. It was like, okay. So we're in the car. He takes my phone, go on Spotify, and then I hear "Cut My Life into Pieces." I was like, bro,
that's an oldie now.
That was the music. I was like, okay, I never danced, but I was standing around, like standing at the watching people dancing to all night. And so we went through all these things, and like first Slipknot album and Linkin Park. You know, Linkin Park seems to be a huge thing, like the first album. It's a huge thing now for these 11-year-old kids because some YouTubers use it. It was like, wow. So I showed him, hey, I made like an early 2000s and late 90s new metal playlist thing. You might find stuff there. Was like, yeah, that's all of the good things there. I was like, wow. So
yeah, I mean, dude, it's making a resurgence right now, like new metal especially. And I saw an article today that I was kind of offended by. An article came out that said, check out, and this is how I know I'm old, because all these metal outlets are gearing it towards younger kids that have never heard these things. they were like, check out this collaboration that Limp Bizkit and Korn did in the 90s that was a total embarrassment rap battle. And they're talking about All in the Family from one of the Korn albums where Korn, Jonathan Davis and Fred Durst had that rap battle back and forth. I was like, embarrassing. That was like the gold standard of nu metal when that came out. Like, that was huge.
And what do they mean by embarrassing? Because it's like, I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, that's like... Man, we've been on such a nostalgia trip with music on Twitch lately, and it's like, you know, Linkin Park has the 20-year anniversary of Meteora, and they just dropped that new song or that unreleased song. But yeah, I mean, go back to that Hybrid Theory album, and I think on the last time I talked to you, you said the first time like you heard that self-titled Slipknot album. I mean, the LD50 by Mudvayne when it came out, there was so much wild stuff going on with music at the time that. Right now, though, I will admit, right now, when it comes to music, I kind of feel as though I did when I was like a teenager. Because there's so much new wild stuff coming out right now that I've been discovering where I'm like, the last couple of years of music releases have been so much fun. And there's so many bands. And a lot of that's to do with the internet, you know, because...
Of course, yeah.
You know,
and I think some people... Some music acts, artists, they kind of really went down during the pandemic and they kind of stopped doing what they do. But I think for some it was, I don't want to say healthy, but they used it to be creative. And I think now we're seeing all this outcome because some people were like so focused and actually could do stuff they wouldn't have done.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and it's great.
Maybe that's the thing. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of artists that I know that, you know, when we got sent home from tour during the pandemic, there were so many people that found other things in music too. Like a guy that I had teched for that was a touring session guitar player for years. He ended up getting a publishing deal and now he's just a songwriter in town. Like he went a completely different route from playing to songwriting. And, you know, the internet has been wild for music discovery though, in a lot of senses, not just for new stuff, but growing up in the US as a teenager, we really only discovered European stuff if it was like a friend's older brother that was into that stuff, just happened to order from overseas. Like there's been stuff that we've checked out online that people are blown away when we watch stuff on Twitch. They're like, you never heard this? Like we had a Twitch stream the other day where we were checking out like hip hop and club stuff from Europe in the 90s and 80s and stuff. And there was something that came up that people were like blown away that I'd never heard it. They're like, this was a #1 club hit in the 90s in like 50
everywhere.
Different countries. But then we looked at the charts in the US, never made it to the US.
Yeah, but you know, there are still some European superstars which are barely known in the US. I've read this interview once with Robbie Williams, not Robin Williams, Robbie Williams, who used to be a member of TankTheTech. And TankTheTech, one of the biggest boy groups in Europe, they were never really big in the US. So when Robbie Williams dropped out of TankTheTech, and he was one of the first actually ex-boy group solo artists that filled stadiums all over Europe. And he said that he could go to the US on holiday and no one would recognize him. And it kind of changed a bit during the last years because of like internet, you know, and you know, the whole music is getting so more and more global. But he's a superstar. He was one of the biggest here, and still in America, most people go like, who? So it's super interesting. And I had many interesting talks about like also about like the typical sounds of American rock and metal music compared to European rock and metal music, because there are still some basic differences which are really hard to put in words. Because I'm just in the middle of producing the new record of Bisto Blanco, which is Alice Cooper's daughter, Calico, and Alice Cooper's bass player, Chuck Garrick. And I just had them over in Germany, and we were writing the whole album together, and now I'm producing it. And both so great, such great guys. Calico's a little younger than me, Chuck is a little older than me. And yeah, they come from the US, I come from here. And we were able to kind of merge these powers and different kind of tastes into something really beautiful and powerful. And this is something I really missed during the pandemic, like meeting people and talk music.
Yeah.
People from other countries. And now I feel like I'm blooming again.
Yeah,
because,
that's amazing, because it's during the pandemic, like I attribute a lot of my musical taste right now over the last few years to doing YouTube, because, I agree with you. There's a big, like sonically, there is a big difference between American rock and metal music and metal rock and metal music. And I'm usually to a point now where I can hear something and be like, that's American or European. And with certain sounds, I can usually nail the country, because some certain countries have different sounds. But real quick, I was looking because I want to see if this blows you away. The song I was telling you about that I didn't know, that everybody was shocked, Insomnia by Faithless.
Yeah, of course, man. Wow.
Never made it here.
I can get no sleep.
Yeah. No, I had no idea.
That singer sadly died a couple of months ago.
I heard that, yeah.
Yeah, wow. Faithless was one of the, Faithless was one of these bands. You listen to it on the radio and you're like, oh no, there's another Eurodance thing going on with like full playback shows. But Faithless, they were a real band with like, they were doing all this stuff on stage with like lots of synthesizers, many people on stage. It was like, I've seen some, I don't know, MTV live stream things from long ago, some live concerts that they actually showed on MTV. It was amazing. A little like IMX are doing that. It's an electro band, but they are full band. They doing all these things. Of course, there's always a computer or some kind of for basic stuff. But yeah, funny, didn't know that. So that must be one of these real huge European hits that no one really knows there. Right?
There are a lot of artists that were big in the US in the 90s that people didn't know were European. So one of the biggest songs that you hear at country shows is the Cotton Eye Joe by the Rednecks.
Oh, yeah, they're Swedish.
Yeah, and like Americans go crazy to that. And then when you tell them that's a Swedish artist, they're like, wait, what? I'm like, yeah.
But funny that you say that, because like when I talked to Calico Cooper, when I had her in the studio, she kind of, I don't know, began singing that fit in bed, got me. And I was like, I know this song since I'm like a teenager, but could you explain the lyrics to me? Because I never looked it up. What is he singing? She's like, yeah, fit in bed. I was like, fit for, and she was like, it's short for if it hadn't been for Cotton Eye Joe's. Okay, fit in bed. Fit and bit, cat Nigel. Like, yeah. I was like, okay, fit and bit. I was like, wow,
dude. Like, and I would have no problem with that, because there are, like, if you come to like the Southwest area of the United States, like there are places in the US where people have such thick accents that they talk like that, where I'm like, I have no idea what you're trying to say right now. Like, I mean, there are things that even growing up, like I grew up in Chicago, and Chicago has an interesting dialect. Like, we change a lot of things. My accent has leveled out over the years, but where I grew up, a lot of people replace like the TH sound. If I were to say the word there, it would sound more like dare. Like we put a lot of D's in the place of THs, and like you kind of have to get used to that. But
oh, sorry. Funny that you say that. We didn't start the US tour in Detroit. We haven't been there. We started in Chicago.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But it's kind of the same. Detroit is a little more up north.
Yeah, it's northeast.
To Toronto, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. So it's like, could you pull off like a super hard Chicago accent
right now?
Dialect.
Right now, I don't know if I can do it, but my wife has told me when I get really excited about something or get really fired up, it usually comes out more. But there's I can't even do it off the top of my head anymore. Like it's just gone. Like moving down here has gotten used to it, or gotten rid of it. But it's usually when I get fired up, or if I get excited or angry or something, it'll come back and it'll just come out, and people are like, "Oh yeah, we hear it." So
isn't that funny that like the brain does that you're instantly being a child again. So these things just come out like that.
Yeah.
And I think a dialect is part of that when you grew up in a certain kind of area or something.
That's what I'm most interested about touring with German bands, because we just had friends over this weekend that one of it was my wife's best friend and her husband actually speaks German. He's like half German and Austrian. His family speaks German. and he was telling me about the different dialects of certain places. So he asked me, like, he goes, you know how to say like bye in German? And I was like, yeah, tschüss. And he's like, yeah, well, there are certain areas that they don't even pronounce the S. They'll just go tschü. And I was like, what?
Yeah, like if you're in the area where Electric Callboy come from, they say tschö.
Yeah.
Like tschö. and there are actually some regions where you don't say that. If you say that, it's super unpolite.
Oh wow. Okay.
So like or like when you're in Bavaria and you're just going to a store and you're like, hello, like for hello. And it's like, especially when it's like older people working there, they look at you like,
what are they?
They expect you to say Grüß Gott, which means like greetings to God.
Oh, okay.
And it was like, and I always try that. I when I'm in Bavaria, I go in the store and like, hello. And then some really correct me like, and say like, I'm sorry, but I only react to Grüß Gott.
Yeah.
Yeah, and tschüss is actually, it's hailing from northern Germany, where I'm coming from. It's a very northern German thing to say, actually.
Yeah. I assume a lot of the German that Duolingo has been teaching me is more northern German, more proper kind of, because I've used phrases I've learned on Duolingo, and a lot of my German friends that I have now would be like, we just simplify it and say it this way, and I'd be like, oh, okay,
yeah, sure,
yeah. But...
No, like the central of like, let's say, neutral German is in Hanover, which is not far away from Hamburg. So this is where people speak not really without a dialect, but mostly dialect free, and from there it's spreading all out in different dialects.
One of the weird things that I learned from my European friends is like, so when Americans greet each other, it's not very simple. It's like, if I were going to a store, like if I walked into a gas station by my house, I wouldn't just say hi or hello or anything like that. A very common greeting is like, hey, how's it going? Hey, how are you doing? And my European friends are like, that's really weird, because for us, we would take that literal and we'd start a conversation and be like, I'm doing pretty good. But for us, it's just like, hey, how's it going? And that's the greeting. Like,
but I'm still doing that, and it's still confusing people. I can't get it out of my system. People come to me, hey, how you doing? And I'm like, yeah, good. Yesterday, not so much, but then people are like,
yeah.
So like, but sometimes, you know, especially Americans, sometimes it feels like they're really overdoing it. When you're at the restaurant and then like, it's how's it going? Whatever you're saying, it's like, yeah, you got it, champ. Okay, sweetie. Yeah. Well, so it's like you're not getting out of this wheel of polite phrases, which are meant in the comforting way, but as a European, especially as a German, especially as a northern German, which are kind of reserved, it's weird, because you're always like, is this person my best friend? Or so if you're trying to be polite and keep up with it.
Yeah.
And for someone like me with my resting Chris face, it's it's not that easy. Yeah. So it's like,
I mean, I'm curious to see if I personally do anything when we're on the road that they don't get. Like, one of the common things for me is if I'm saying thank you to somebody, it's a common American phrase, but you'd say, I appreciate it. But instead of saying I appreciate it, you just say appreciate it. Like, so I'm like curious, if I say that to somebody, they're gonna be like, what did he just say?
And with English people, I had to learn very early to kind of get the 100 different meanings of the word cheers.
Yeah.
Because everything's cheers. And so goodbye, hello. If you're doing that with a drink, or thank you, or, you know, so many things are cheers.
Yeah. I have a lot of friends in the US that do that too. Like, I had a lighting director on a tour that anytime he'd acknowledge you, like if you do something for him, if he asks you to pass him something at dinner or anything, it's like, yeah, here you go. I'd be like, oh, cheers. I'm like, okay. Like, it's like, you can always tell when an American travels abroad for the first time, because they'll come back to the US and they'll repeatedly say things that they heard overseas. So usually when you hear an American that says cheers all the time, they went to England for a little bit and came back and they're trying to overdo it.
I think it's like in the on the whole Iron Maiden tour, it was like the most used word for thank you from the
Really?
crew. Yeah, because
Well,
they're
that would
all
make sense. Yeah,
they're all British,
yeah,
so it's
that
like
makes sense.
it's a lot of cheers. And when I was now I know it, but when I went on a tour in England for the first time, I think it was 2006, and I didn't know that, and I always thought like people would go like,
Yeah,
cheers. Was
yeah,
it? Why? Where's that
yeah,
coming from? It's like,
yeah.
cheers, buddy. And I was like, do I need a glass for that now? Or yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
I mean, it's most of the time in the US, that's what cheers would be. You only ever hear that if you're doing a toast or you're at a bar. It's like, hey, cheers, cool.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's so many different things that I hear all the time from so many different places, and language is just such a cool thing to me. Like the more I learn about different people's languages, and like I made the mistake of thinking that because I didn't know how diverse German was when I first started learning it. So when we're on Twitch and we've checked out like Austrian bands and stuff like that, I'd be like, well, they speak German. I'll be able to.
Yeah, no.
I was like, they speak German, right? I'll be able to understand this. And the Germans in chat are like, dude, we don't understand them.
Yeah. No, that's the thing. So Austrian German and also Swiss German, and I'm not speaking about like that. There's Swiss German and there's Swiss German. One of them is a real different language. The other one is just like German, which is more like a hard dialect. They also have like different grammar, some words that we do not have, and sometimes even different grammar rules, different use of articles and stuff. So it's like learning that, like real actual Austrian German, it's really not easy. On first sight for us Germans, when I'm from the north, so when I hear people from Switzerland or Austria, it's easy to mix it up with just South German, like Bavarian people, but it's not the same. So if you dive into, you realize something way else. It's like, you think like, especially maybe as America is so big, and when you hear about China that they have like 1,000 dialects and they don't understand each other, it's like comprehensible because the country is so big. If you look at Germany on the map, it's a real small country compared to the US. I don't know, it's half the size of Texas maybe. Yeah. And then you hear like we have so many dialects that maybe some people don't even really understand each other. When they're talking the dialect, it might be hard to understand.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like that.
It's noticeable for me even when somebody's speaking English. Like, so I could tell the difference, for example, having a conversation with you, how you speak in English. If I were to talk to somebody in like Feuerschwanz, for example, because they're from down south, their accent is completely different. And
well, I can speak in this kind of in this kind of accent with the dialect as well, right?
Yeah.
So, but sometimes it's even like I talked to a guy from London. He says like London is so big, they have like different dialects around London. So
yeah, I mean, I made the mistake too of thinking that anything can be translated literally. And I learned very fast with German that that's not the case. Like if you did a literal translation to English, way different. So I made the dumbest mistake ever. We were checking out an Austrian band and the name of the song was Großvater. And in my head from learning on Duolingo, I was like, close. Okay, that could mean big. It could mean tall. And then I started thinking about it, and I looked at the chat and I was like, is this song called Big Daddy? And they're like, it's grandfather. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. Okay.
All right, Big Daddy.
Yeah. I was like, but in my head, I see the word clothes and I'm just like big. Like that's the first thing that comes into my head. But there's so many meanings now that it's like, I've learned to not look at it literal. You just brought up a minute ago, I want to go back to this, the Iron Maiden tours. Now, I know you guys have more dates coming up with them, but you've already done a bunch of shows with them before too. How was that experience for you?
Man, it was like, I don't know where to start. First of all, I just want to say, being asked by Iron Maiden to go on tour with them, it's one of the craziest things to happen. But being asked a second time, that's even crazier because it means obviously we didn't fuck it up.
Yeah.
And obviously the people liked it. Obviously the band liked it. So I tried to make it short. So I'm just like telling one of the most important moments. We got on tour. The first date was in, damn, it was somewhere.
Well, didn't you miss one of the first dates too? Because the bus broke down?
No. We nearly missed something in the middle, but it was like we started. It was one of the. I'm struggling to say that because it's one of the ex-Yugoslavian countries, and if I'm mixing that up now the wrong way, people will be really pissed.
I get what you're saying. Yeah.
So I keep it like that. It was at one of the ex-Yugoslavian countries. We went there on the first day. We did not see anyone from the Iron Maiden guys because it was their first show after the pandemic as well. So they really were focusing on their thing. But we didn't know that. We thought like, okay, they would just like stay for themselves all the time. We were fine. We were like, okay, that's Iron Maiden. We're just, a small band. So we played the first show. I nearly broke all my bones on stage. I had like a really bad incident, but nothing really happened. So everything was fine. But I nearly finished the tour on that first date because I felt so hard on stage. So,
oh man.
Then we had the second date, and we played the first song. And in the middle of the first song, I looked at the right, and the stage on the side, they had like borders like this, so you don't see like the monitor desks and stuff.
Yeah.
And it was like stage construction things. And I saw like half of a head here, and I was like, "That's Steve Harris. You can see him by the hair."
Yeah,
and he was there, and I looked at him, and he was just like doing that, like, yeah. I was like, "What the fuck is going on?" So I kept on playing, and I was always like looking to the right side, and he didn't go away. After 3 songs, he was still there. And then sometimes while we were like playing, I saw this. And filming the audience, filming us again, was like, Then I looked to the left side, and I saw a beautiful smile and someone doing. There was Nico McBrain watching from the other side. It was like, what the fuck is going on? And so I met Steve after the show, and from that day on, we were talking every day. Every day we had our like 15 minutes after the show talk. Then sometimes before the show. Then we met other guys from the band. Our drummer Nick and Nico got really like into talking, and these people, so humble, so approachable, so nice. Wow. Yeah. Like I said this in a million interviews now, but I need to repeat it. No hardcore Iron Maiden fan would ever be disappointed. They are exactly the way you want them to be, and even better. It was just mind-blowing how nice these people were. And another funny anecdote, the biography of Bruce Dickinson is called "What Does This Button Do?" Yeah. And it was the first thing that I started reading after we got booked on the tour, because I was like, okay, I want to be prepared. So I got a lot of stuff. Of course, I knew Iron Maiden, I knew like some albums and many songs, but I didn't know like everything, and I wanted to know everything. So I got into this biography, and then you find out why Bruce is the way he is, like being a pilot, being like doing fencing, doing motivational speeches and all these things. He's living a life of 1,000 men, all the things he's doing. And the first time I met him on this tour, it was somewhere between the catering area and the backstage area. He was repairing a door.
Wait, was like just a door?
Yeah, just a door. Some door was like, it didn't go. She was like, oh man, what the fuck? It was because there was some issue with some door, and he's Bruce Dickinson. He could be like, can someone bring me 100 doors, please?
Yeah.
But he's not like that. He's like, what does this button do? He sees the door. It doesn't work. He's just fixing it. And it was like so impressive. And I was like, wow. This man is such an inspiration. You can be like one of the biggest rock stars in the universe, but you still, if you see a door backstage which doesn't work, you don't do that. You just go there and try to fix it.
I mean, that is so amazing to hear, man, because my time in the music industry, I've met a lot of artists that are the opposite, like you said. It's like they want something done, they snap their fingers. they're not watching bands from the side of the stage. Like when you said you noticed like Steve Harris was still there after 3 songs, I was like, that's a long time for a band member to watch another band, because a lot of the times band members will go check out a song or two and then go back to what they were doing. I'm like,
no, from day 2, he watched nearly every show from start to end.
That's amazing. Like, that's so cool. And artists that are that big, there's a reason that they're that big and they've had that long of a career, is because they are like that. Like, I don't know if you're familiar. I mean, he's the biggest U.S. country artist ever, but do you know who Garth Brooks is?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. We did some shows with Garth Brooks once. And even to me, who's been around a lot of people, I was like, wow, like this is going to be wild because it's Garth Brooks. We show up and their crew was very, very cool, but was like, kind of stay out of the way until Garth and his band are done with sound check, and then you can go up and set up. And they finished, but Garth was still on stage, and he plays with a headset microphone. So he's got his headset on, he's playing his acoustic, and he's just walking up and down the stage at sound check. And his guitar tech goes, you can go up there and start setting up now. And I was like, really? I don't want to get in his way or anything. He's like, no, he won't care. Go ahead. So I go up and I place my singer's mic stand, and I start putting his guitar pedals down. And Garth is a foot away from me, and I was kind of nervous, and I dropped a handful of guitar picks when I was trying to put them on the pick holder. He stops what he's doing immediately, comes over and picks them all up for me. And he's, oh, here you go, man. He's like, hey, I'm Garth, by the way. And I was just like, what?
I know.
But he literally stopped what he was doing to pick up something I dropped. And then while we were sound checking, he came up and introduced himself to every member of not only the band, but our crew. And then that night he had dinner with us in catering. And I'm like, this is wild. And that was one of the moments I realized, is like, that's why this guy has this big of a career, is because he treats everybody around him with that much respect and kindness. Cat.
Yeah.
Sorry, people listening on Spotify are not going to know what's going on.
Yeah, he's more of a parrot. He's always like sitting on my shoulder.
Yeah.
But I think people, like artists that become that big, are either like that cool, mm-hmm. or like real assholes. Yes. I don't want to really tell any names. We were talking about this one rap artist earlier, but and there are some which are, and I have made the experience, some, oh no, how should I say, like when I met like real big artists, they were either like the way Iron Maiden were, or like real assholes. But I think I never met something in between, like someone who was just okay. Yeah, they were either like that good or what the fuck,
Yeah, I agree with that. Like in my experience too, I totally agree with that. You either get somebody that's very full of themselves and acts like a diva, or you get somebody that is just the nicest, most down to earth, kind person. I'm glad to hear that you guys said you got asked back out and that you got along with them so well, because a couple episodes ago on the podcast, I had one of my American friends that tours. He worked for Within Temptation when they did dates with Iron Maiden.
Yeah.
And he told me that I guess whoever was before them, or a couple bands before them as the opener before they joined, their crew did not get along with the Iron Maiden crew. And I was like, oh, I hope it wasn't Lord of the Lost. And now I know it wasn't.
No, actually, like we met Within Temptation on this tour once. We played one concert together. So it was like 2 support bands. It was us, then Within Temptation, then Iron Maiden. And also the Within Temptation crew was like teamwork from the very first mm-hmm. minute, because even if it was a stadium, the backstage area where we had like place to set everything up, it was not that big. So both of our crews had to get along and work together. And yeah, the Within Temptation crew, they just came there. They're the bigger band, and so they came to our crew and we're like, hey, come on, guys, let's make a plan so we can like work all together. I'm doing this. What's your name? Let's do it like that. So they were like, wow. Yeah. So just one, because they really had just one area where they had to set up everything together. Was real, real nice. So I also, Within Temptation, I can only say nice things. Yeah. I had Sharon had her dressing room right beside our dressing room, and we were talking and like for quite a long time. And she checked us out. She liked us a lot. And a couple of weeks later, we met again at Summer Breeze Open Air. And then she on stage said like, hey, next, because we had this deadliner slot in the middle of the night, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So after Within Temptation, he said like, hey guys, don't go home. No, there's a great band coming, Lord of the Lost. And it was like, wow.
Oh,
So
super nice.
also Within Temptation, great crew, great band. I can only say nice things. And
yeah, my buddy that was out with them was the only American in their crew. And he said he got along with them so well that they offered to like bring him over to their European dates too, but he already has another full-time gig here where he's working with another artist. But I'm really curious, just because you guys have such a diverse sound with a lot of your stuff. When you're playing a show with somebody like Iron Maiden, what kind of planning goes into your set list? Like, do you really think about it a lot? Like, okay, we're going to have a different crowd. Like, what's your process with that? Because I imagine you probably changed up a lot of stuff.
Yeah, we're like, what we never do is we are never changing the sound of a song. We're just picking different songs, because I never want to try to kind of like, oh, now we're playing with like a band which is much harder, so let's change our sound for the band or the visuals or whatever. We're not doing that. We just, because we are so diverse, we just have to pick stuff. So obviously when you play for Iron Maiden, and last year we played 30 or 40 minutes depending on if there was a second band or not, or a third band or not, sorry. Because sometimes it was two support bands. Mm-hmm. Obviously we didn't play any ballads, and I tried not to play songs which are like, where the parts are like too complex. I mean, we're not Miss Sugar, you know, but some songs that we have are in our world a little more complex. So we know Iron Maiden fans, there are a lot about melody, because Iron Maiden that's not hard, you know. It's the core of British heavy metal, but the band itself, it's not a super hard sound. So when I'm starting to do all these screamo things and sometimes growling, it's so much harder than Iron Maiden fans would like it or would be able to digest it maybe. So we were trying to keep things melodic, because they like big melodies, they like big choruses and all these things. And so we had the set list, and then we come back to Steve Harris. After a couple of shows, I was like, hey, Steve, can I ask you, how do you like our set list? Do you think it fits its purpose? And he said, yes, most of it I really like, but this one song that you're playing in the end, we were playing this samba metal tune called La Bomba, which we have. He was like, I didn't get the song at first, but then I checked it out, and now I understand why it's a cool song, and it might work for you with headliner shows, and people that know you and get your kind of humor, and that you're not too serious about yourselves. But if you see Lord of Lost for the first time, that's the last song you play, you want people to go home or to go into the Iron Maiden show with a big melody, with something, you know, with more pathos to it. So I was like, yeah, that's right. I didn't think about that. I thought like maybe we give them like a lot of energy and fun in the end. It was like, no, give them that melody. And it was like, do you have a song in mind? And he said, yeah, try On This Rock, I Will Build My Church, one of our songs. Try to play this in the end. And he always said, you know, what do I know? It was like, Steve,
he's trying to be humble.
Steve, what do you know?
Yeah.
I mean, look at what you have done. Look at what you have achieved over the years. So what do you know? There's your answer. So thank you very much for the advice. So we changed the set on the next gig, and it was so much better.
Yeah.
So, and now this time, I just finished the Iron Maiden set list for this year. I just finished it yesterday, and it took me 1 week because I need, I mean, not 8 hours a week every day, but I put it in a playlist, and I listen to it all the time when I'm doing like housework or in the car, like, oh no, this song doesn't work, let's put another one in. And then trying to, you know, have the right order. And then also keep in mind, we have two different guitar tunings. We have drop C and drop A, and I don't want the guys to change all the time, because I want an Iron Maiden show to be a monologue, not a dialogue. People get sound the whole time, and when the show is over, they can decide if they like us or not. I'm not doing any announcements. There's not more than 2 seconds of break between the songs, so it all needs to go like that. They don't even have a chance to say go home.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
So and then you have like 2 great songs in it, which are kind of like the same feeling. You're like, no, that doesn't work. We need a different one. So yeah, so that takes me a while.
Yeah.
And of course, if we were supporting, let's say, Behemoth, then we were like, maybe 3 or 4 of the songs would be the same, like with Iron Maiden. Obviously, some of our biggest hits that need to be played, but everything around it, I would try to go for like, okay, let's look at what's the hardest songs that we have.
Yeah.
So otherwise Behemoth fans will be like, no.
Have you guys ever played with Behemoth?
No, not.
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
We were like, we played a festival in France this year in summer. We were playing at the same time at different stages, and I met Nagal shortly before the show. But no, we never played with them. We were close to playing with them once.
Yeah, I imagine that would be even for a lot of metalheads, that would be a drastic contrast. I mean, it's like,
but I still totally would do it, because we have like, when we play like, I don't know, 30 or 40 minutes, we have enough songs which are like hard enough for people to go like, okay, might be interesting. And I love contrast. It's nothing I would say no to.
Yeah.
But I don't really know. I don't really know the typical Behemoth fan, if they're like, are they very much bound to the trueness of metal? Or,
I mean, it's a difficult question, because like me, for example, I like Behemoth, but I wouldn't consider myself a stereotypical metalhead either. It's like,
I like Behemoth as well.
Yeah. So, I think when you think of the stereotypical metalhead, like the old school metalhead, it's kind of gatekeepy. It's kind of like, we want everything fast and heavy. And, the big debate right now is tracks in the music industry, and old school metalheads are like, tracks are bullshit because they don't understand how they actually work. And I mean, I love that you just brought up contrast with shows, because I love that. I love when I go to a show and there's different artists. Like, me too, yeah. I recently went to see Lorna Shore a couple months ago in town. And it was a 5-band bill. And even for me, I'm like, 5 bands is too much sometimes.
Yeah, but that's always with the real metal bands. They always have like 70 bands.
Yeah. But it was one of the first times I'd seen a show in a while and I caught the whole show. Every band, I was there for the whole time. And after about the 3rd band, I was like, this is too much. Like, this is kind of punishing, because every band, it was Lorna Shore, Aborted, who else? I know Angel Maker, Of Sulfur, and Ingested. So you got a couple, European deathcore bands, and then American and Canadian, and it's like,
but it's all core and breakdown.
Dude, it was too much. It was too much.
Yeah, I get
like, by the time Lorna Shore started, who I really wanted to see, I was like, dude, I've already heard like 18 face pummeling breakdowns already, and I'm like, that's why
sorry guys, I've heard every possible distorted noise that could ever exist.
Yeah.
So I get it.
Yeah, and I will say I enjoyed it. I like all those bands, but at a certain point, it's just like, I want more diversity to live show with the artists and what I'm getting. I saw Sabaton a few months back too, and it's like they had Epica with them, and that's like a good blend, even though they're both considered in that power metal realm. It's like, you got Epica, who's different, way more symphonic, and it was a cool blend. But yeah, it's after a while it just gets like too much when it's the same thing. And I gotta imagine, because Iron Maiden is asking you guys back out, you're going to be doing those. They wouldn't do that if the crowd didn't receive you well, but like, how was that initial reaction like with you guys in comparison to Iron Maiden? Like, what was the crowd like your first few shows?
The crowd was real good. Like it's of course it got better through the dates, because this first row, maybe like 300 people, not being there for every concert, but many of them being at every concert, and you see them again.
Yeah.
And 300 people is like a small club filled with people. This is like the Maiden first row. They come in earlier. And so sometimes they were already there when we sound checked, so they kind of got to know us over time. And we played 18 shows with Maiden in 16 countries. So of course, like at the last dates, it was better than in the beginning, but it didn't start off bad, not at all.
Yeah.
Because for every concert after like 50, 60, at latest 70% of the set, when I did like clap your hands, make some noise, all these kind of things, the arms of the people went up until the front of house, you know, where for the listeners here, where the guy with the mixing console is, the sound guy, and behind that. And that's always like a good mirror of what's happening. So when you're doing the thing and like, you know, people until that point, where actually the people are that want to party and not just want to watch, if hands go up, everything's fine. It was real good, because it was like that all the time. Of course, at every concert you had like this typical 3 to 10 people standing in the front row over the barrier,
just
watching
arms
you like
crossed,
that. or like putting the hood over their head, and like not watching or even turning around. But it was always just like a little less or a little more than just a handful of people. And
you get that at any kind of show. You always get the people that are just there for one band that aren't open enough to hear anybody else. They just want to support that one band.
No, you get that. And it was like, as I said, I talked to Steve then like nearly every night, and always asked him about the reaction. And we always like, he was always like, no, that was real good. And when it was like, yeah, but today it was a little colder than yesterday. Then he said like, yeah, but don't forget, we are in city X. I don't gonna say a name here, but we are in city X. It's a little different than city Y, where we played yesterday. So, and because you can compare these kind of things, you know that some cities, some countries, people are hotter or colder. You know, the whole reaction can be different. And so he was always, and Steve is brutally honest with things, which I like about him a lot. He just tells you, hey, this is not gonna work, and he tells you in a respectful manner. So it was always really good to talk to him to see how we're doing. And when the tour was over for us, because their tour was going on, they went to the US and did the whole thing with Trivium as a support band, and then Within Temptation again. He already said, and also the management already said, hey, let's do that again. We don't know when exactly, but watch out, we're gonna contact you. So we were just waiting, and of course nothing happened for a couple of months, and because we knew they were asking us. But after a couple of months you start like doubting it, because you know the inner child in yourself is like, when is this happening? And then like, I don't know, I think in September or October maybe, there was a mail from our booking agents like, hey, there was he just called me, was like, I got the mail from England. It was like, so okay.
That's awesome. It's funny what you said about the cities though, because even in the US, regardless of what genre I'm touring with, there are certain cities that if I see them on our schedule, I'm like, that show's not going to be that good. Because we know when we're going into a certain city in the States how that crowd is going to be. Like,
I mean, there's actually one thing that I can say, because it's something which might be common for most like big cities, like capital cities. Like if you compare like Berlin or London, maybe it's kind of like the same. Berlin and London can be a little colder, and people start to party much later, which is logical, because when you are living in a city like London or Berlin, and I don't know, you want whatever kind of party at whatever kind of weekday, you will find it.
Yeah.
So people are more used to like, you know, okay, it's like having Netflix just for concerts. You know, you just go like, oh yeah, cool. Yeah. But when you're living in the middle of nowhere and you come there and play, it's like people don't even have a TV. And they're like, oh, there's a movie tonight, let's go. You know, they're like, what? So I totally get that. So my experience is like, the bigger the city is actually, or the more metropolitan the city is, the colder the audience is.
Yep.
And I don't want to piss anyone off here. It's just a mass movement kind of thing.
Yeah. No,
which,
I mean,
which
dude,
happens there.
I live in Nashville, and I will tell you right now, Nashville is one of the worst cities for crowds in the United States because there's so much music here. Everybody's oversaturated.
It's only music there.
Yeah. So when a show does come through, and so many tours are skipping Nashville right now, like every tour announcement I'm seeing, it's like they'll get to Atlanta, which is like 4 hours away, or maybe Indianapolis, which is like 5 hours north, but everybody's skipping Nashville. And I'm like, I'm not surprised. Like, but man, one of the things I've been really excited to talk to you about, well, two things really. One, congratulations on basically surprise releasing a #1 album. That was insane when I saw that happen.
It was, yeah.
For anybody that's listening that doesn't know, I imagine most people would, but your last studio album dropped right before the New Year's, I think December 30th. And it was essentially what? A week of promotion at most?
6 days. We released the date on December 24th, which is the day where we celebrate Christmas in Germany. We're not doing it on 25th. We're already doing 24th. And I thought like there were two reasons for doing that. First of all, I wanted to go back to this magic in music. Like you only know one song for a couple of days, and then you go to your store, get the album, you're like, oh, wow. And even if you stream it, you're not like so oversaturated by like listening to half of the album because all of them had been singles for half a year and all the magic is gone. And the second thing was, I thought if you announced it at Christmas Eve, you either have people that are really super happy with their families and you can, I don't know, totally make their day and make them even happier. And of course, they will spend all the Christmas money on the thing. So I'm not going to lie about that. But on the other side, you have people which are super depressive. Like in Germany, I think Christmas Eve and New Year's is like the #1 suicide day.
It's the same over here.
Yeah. So I was like, what about all these people? And we are getting like hundreds, thousands of mails and messages a year about people that say, hey, your music saved my life. I thought like, what about saving some lives?
Yeah.
So people are at home and you just give them a new song and they know in 6 days there's going to be an album. It sounds so stupid to say that, but maybe you get that sign like, no, I'm not going to kill myself today. I'm going to wait for that record and maybe give them some hope, you know?
Yeah. And music right now, I've seen more people be open about how they feel and talk about music like that than I ever have. I mean, it could be anything. It could be any style of music. I've seen people say like that new Lorna Shore album that they released, like people are like, this literally, because if you dive into a lot, even metal, people that don't like metal dismiss it as just being angry, emotionless music. And if you really dive into a lot of these metal bands, there is so much more emotion in that than anything else. Yeah. And if you can connect to that, I mean, there have been music videos I have watched this year on my channel where I have been in tears because I'm like, and sometimes it's not something you would expect. You just hear something that connects with you in a certain kind of way and it just hits you. And what you guys did with your album, I got to admit, it made me feel like a kid because the problem...
Exactly that.
The problem with music right now is kind of what you touched on is, especially with labels that want to push nonstop music videos because they want to keep people, because people's attention spans right now are horrible. You know, like you said, when we were kids, you might get a single and then you wait for the album to come out. You get all excited and you take it home and then you listen to the whole thing.
And you wait all day on MTV for that single.
Yeah. Dude, I had, back when I was a teenager, I had a VCR in my room. And when I first got that VCR, I would watch MTV2 all day and wait for the music video I wanted. Be like, go.
Of course.
Like,
yeah, of course.
So I get, doing YouTube stuff and working with artists, I get emails all the time where people will send me advanced copies of the album. And they're like, here, you can listen to it. They think it's cool. They're like, you can listen to it before anybody else. And I was like, I don't listen to them. I like the anticipation of a record release day. And finally, it's out. You sit with it. You listen to it. Like, I love that. And I hate to use these guys as an example because I love them, but Electric Callboy, their last album that just came out, 7 singles. There were 3 songs on that CD when it came out that nobody heard yet. So it's like,
I know, but I think in this case, I need to make an exception because they had this whole singer change going on. And I don't know because I didn't ask them, but I think that they actually produced those songs bit by bit.
I bet they did.
Yeah. I don't think they produced an album and were like, okay, come on, let's wait 1.5 years or 1 year.
Yeah.
And let's just wait.
It's an excellent point.
Yeah. I think they had the singer change and then like they put out a song and they kind of, I'm just, for you people out there, for Electric Callboy fans, I'm just assuming because I don't know it, but I would even go that far that maybe through all this pump it thing, then they kind of even found their way to go to even more because they were like, wow, that's just the stuff we want to do.
Well,
so
I mean, you are a producer and you have that mind, and now that you've put it that way, I actually think you're right, because this is one of the situations, one of the first situations where I've ever seen where, like, you know, Sebastian left the band, Nico came in. And it was one of the first times where I was like, wow, I think this was best for both parties, because
it was so good. I love Electric Callboy. I love Ghost Kid.
Oh,
and they are both like, I don't know, it looks like they're blooming doing that thing. I'm loving that. It's great.
I've like Ghost Kid, Sebastian, the Electric Callboy fans might know him as Sushi, but I talk to him rather normally on WhatsApp, and it's like, the vibe I get from him is that him leaving Electric Callboy has allowed him to really pursue the artistic stuff he wanted to. And then Nico coming into Electric Callboy has really made them find their groove with that humorous metalcore,
absolutely
stuff like that. And so now that you say that, because we got Pump It way back, and then you know, we got the moves and stuff like that. But there is, even though that is the case, and it most likely is, there is still a sense though where it's like,
I know.
There's almost nothing new on the album to discover. You've heard it all already.
No. Some of them like deliberately doing that, and there's a thing that most people out there don't know, and I'm not getting tired of telling it. You can only pitch your songs to Spotify playlists, which artists need nowadays to get the exposure. You can only pitch them. Pitching means like you give them to Spotify, and someone decides if they put it in a playlist or not. You can only pitch those songs if the album is not out yet.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't even know that.
That's the reason. So that's why they went from 3 months to 4, 5, 6, sometimes 7 months now. And they're putting out not 2 singles, they put out 5, 6, 7. Because then those songs get pitched, then the album comes. I get that.
Okay.
From a marketing strategic point, I get that. But for us, for our last record, Judas, when the record came out after 4 or 5 months of marketing, we were tired. And we were like, our magic for the record was gone. And it doesn't mean that the magic is gone forever. I love that record and I'm super proud of it. But for the moment, after like 4 or 5 months of that, I felt so dried out. I was like, oh, the album comes, people can listen to it now. And I was just so happy that it was over. I was like, okay, now go away with marketing. And for Blood and Glitter, the album came out and we are so pumped to promote it for the whole year. We didn't even release vinyl yet. It's coming in March. We didn't release the big earbook, which like has like 96 pages of booklet. It's coming in summer. We didn't release a music cassette. It's coming in fall. Therefore, we take all the marketing money. We don't put it in print or whatever. We just shoot music videos. We're shooting a music video to each single song on the record after the album is out. So we're doing it all differently. And everyone in the music business told us, don't do it. You're going to go down big time. We can't support that. All those pros said, just don't do it. And then we went on number 1. Yeah. And now I heard from 5 bands already and their labels that they're changing their marketing plans right now because of that.
Dude, when I saw the numbers, when it came back, because I actually talked about this on Twitch, I was like, a lot of people were like, I know a lot of people in the industry were probably like, this is a dumb move. And I didn't ask because it's not my place, but I do know some of the people at Napalm. And I think I said it in my reaction to Leave Your Hate in the comments. I was like, I would be so curious to know what people at Napalm actually think about 6 days lead time of releasing a record, because that's not how people are doing things. But when I saw the numbers come back, I was like, they just did something. People are going to be doing this now.
I can tell you, and I'm not going to piss anyone off at Napalm. There are like many people working, and some of them totally supported it, which were the people that understand me and the band more as artists and like could dive into the whole vision of it and understood the whole thing. And then there were other people that are just about numbers, and it's their job to be about numbers, not their job to work with artists. And they were all like, no, it's not going to work. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. So we had those both sides. And so, of course, it was a big discussion. And I always want like, guys, please just trust me. And they were like, no, we need that 4 months of marketing and like content every day. And then I just said like, yeah, then give us content for 4 months. We're not going to do any content because we want to do it differently. And I was like, please, believe me, trust us. Maybe it's not going to be number one, but I'm sure, like, because I said, like, I'm sure, I was even sure it's not going to be top 20, but I told them, listen, isn't it about, like, when you just want numbers, 1.5 years after the release, you want to look back on how many albums have been sold. And the way we want to do it with, like, releasing so many music videos and getting out the different editions piece by piece and so on, and being on tours, I think 1.5 years later, the album will be sold more, or at least the exact same number than the other one. So, and they were like, okay, so this kind of changed their point of view, because they were all just focusing on that first week of release. It's like, no, it's not going to sound that many. It was like, yeah, of course not. But you need to look on the long run. And so in the end, I was wrong. We sold even more in that first week. So,
yeah, I mean,
so it's like, well, good.
But, the thought process that you have is so fascinating, and it's so interesting, because what I've been thinking about is like I've worked on a couple records, like as a production assistant in the studio. And when I think about how those albums were marketed, there's one specifically that I'll think of. I won't say what band it was, but like you said, it was that 4 or 5 months lead time to the album, as they put everything into the album coming out. Music videos were out ahead of time. Singles were out ahead of time. First week, it was a number 2 overall, like in the US, which is huge. The next week, it wasn't even on the charts, because they pushed everything for that first week. So it sold X amount the first week. Week 2 of it being out, it sold 2% of the number of records it did the first week, and never went higher than that. So the way that you guys are doing it is interesting to think about, because it's like, okay, we're going to drop this record. Now for the next year, we're going to focus on it, instead of focusing on it a year in advance and then dropping it and moving on to the next thing. So this is going to be really interesting, because I really do think other people are going to look at this and be like, yeah, you should try this.
You just have to have a little bit of courage, because you might risk a good charts position. In this case, we had a good charts week, not so many big releases, and we underestimated, our fans, because they were like so fucking crazy about it. They went more crazy than we ever thought, so that's why we went number one. But if you're not that lucky, but if you're going the same way, you might risk the higher positions in the beginning. But I think 1.5 years later, it's all going to be cool. But you have to sacrifice all those Spotify singles, but there's a workaround for that, and that's very easy. You just release a single edit of the same song.
Yeah.
And this is why we released a single edit for the playlist of Leave Your Hate in the Comments. It's not 4.5 minutes, it's 3. Now, like in 2 weeks or something, we're going to release a single edit of another song. And that way, you're going to be pitched to playlists again.
Yeah. That's
so
smart.
even for that, there's a workaround. We didn't know if it would work with Spotify, but if you change enough about the song, not just, I don't know, cutting off a reverb tail at the end for 3 seconds, but if you really have like a different length of the song, maybe a different intro, outro kind of thing. It's working. And for the fans, it might be even interesting because I was a kind of fan back then. I loved those single edits and those extended edits and blah, blah. I loved that. So I had like more versions of the same song and could more like get into the mind of the artist. What was the artist thinking? Why did they, I don't know, make that version shorter that way? Why not that way? And so on. So
that's why I really love, like I fell in love with Nine Inch Nails at a young age. And that's why I like a lot of Trent Reznor's work, is because there's so many different single edits and remixes and different versions of all the stuff he's ever done that it's so cool to dive into that and see like.
I was just gonna say, and I just told in a different interview, I had all the 3 singles of We On This Together because there were like 3 singles with different bonus tracks and edits. Yeah. Oh, no, sorry. You have in America 3 singles. I need to do it that way. I'm German.
Yeah. I've gotten used to doing this. And it's funny because the first time I ever heard of that, for anybody that's watching on Spotify or listening on Spotify or wherever, we're throwing up the 3. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to make a hand signal for 3. Like when I was younger, we used to do this. And then I started doing this. And then the first time I ever saw Inglourious Bastards, the scene where the guy gives himself away by doing this. I asked one of my German friends, I was like, wait, that's really a thing? Like when you guys count on your hand, they're like, it makes sense. Because when 1, 2, 3, I was like, oh yeah, that does make sense. No, we're dumb. We go like, yeah, but no, that's, I've gotten used to, I was joking with the Powerwolf crew when they were like, we're texting in WhatsApp and they're talking about like centigrade and stuff. And they're like, oh, he doesn't know what we're talking about. I'm like, dude, my whole life revolves around Central European time and metric. I'm fine. Like I'm basically a German at this point, dude. Cause, but anyways, before we tail off on this, the album release was fantastic. I love the way you guys decided to do that because in my opinion, that is one of the things that's happened. I don't know how it is in Europe, but in the US with music business, it's all about the chart numbers. And sometimes too much is put into that. Like, for example, country music that I worked in forever, they don't care about albums. They care about radio singles. Yeah. So it's like, I've worked for artists that have had like 7 #1 radio singles in a row, but they're still playing mid-sized venues and they're not selling albums and stuff. And it's like, that's cool that you can say you have 7 #1 US singles, but like, what is that translating into? You know what I mean? It's like the record label gets to say that they had another artist with a #1, but what's that really doing for your career? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So. Yeah, but it's interesting that it's not just like dance music and what do you want? Dance music and hip hop, which is so much into singles.
Yeah.
But also country music. But it's always been that way with country music because they kind of never got out of the time where it was only about singles, which was the 50s.
Yeah.
You know, I think it kind of gets stuck there because back then you couldn't do it any other way because there were just no long players. So.
Well, with country too, like when a country album comes out, like, and I spent a lot of time working in country. You've heard every song because it's been released as a single when the album, it's basically a compilation of singles is what their album ends up being. But on top of everything and with the album too, the next big, this is wild to me too. I don't know if this is wild to you, but you guys have been announced as one of the preliminary German picks for Eurovision. And I'm not going to lie, when I saw that, I was like, wait, what? Like, what? Did you guys, okay, because I'm American and I've only known about Eurovision for a couple of years, did they contact you ahead of time and let you know you're going to be a pick, or did you find out when everybody else did?
Well, you kind of sent your application there, and we did that the last years already. We also did the last year when Electric Cowboy did it.
Oh, okay.
And we did it this time, and of course, then you hear back things like they are interested. Or not, so we knew that they were like basically interested, but it's not. They didn't give out the entire information, so we're like, we might be able to do that, but we let you know. But we need to check some things. So can we set up a call with the whole band next week because we need to check some things. Blah blah blah. I don't even remember the excuses they came up with, but actually that call where they were like gathering all of us where like all of us on Zoom, where the moment they said, "Hey, you're in the show."
Yeah.
So it was a surprise thing because they wanted our surprise reaction to put it online. You can find it somewhere online.
Yeah.
So we really didn't know until that moment. We knew they were interested, and we knew we were like in the kind of inner circle because they, of course, there's some talking before, but they didn't let us know before. So yeah.
I mean, for me looking at Eurovision, I guess it's kind of a surprise. I'm like super stoked, but I guess it's kind of a surprise because it depends on how countries like approach it, because a lot of the times you do get countries that they play it very safe with very like radio friendly things and stuff like that. And you guys are a band that to me has never really, I guess for lack of a better way of putting it, like played that game. You guys aren't conforming to a lot of things. You guys aren't changing your sound or your image to please anybody or anything like that. Like it is very surprising that, that you were that pick, but it's also really, really cool. And now I think it's March 3rd, correct me if I'm wrong, is when that next announcement and the preliminaries are. Like, for other Americans that are listening, and even me, myself, I don't fully know how it works. What is the next step for you guys now? There's a handful of German bands that are in the preliminaries. What's the next step from here?
So there's some things I need to say. You will, first of all, you said like playing it safe. For Germany, playing it safe didn't work out the last time. So they were like
the last few times.
Yeah, whenever they said like radio friendly stuff, we got last or like second to last. And so I think they kind of recognized that, better late than never. So we might not be better than anyone else, but we're different. We're different from the things they did the last years. And damn it, what was your question?
What is the now that you guys have been preliminary chosen, what is the next step from here starting on March 3rd?
Sorry, and now I know the second thing I wanted to say. It was something I told them, was like, hey, if you want us, you need to take us the way we are.
Yeah.
So and right now we're doing this blood and glitter glam rock thing, and we're gonna look like that, we're gonna sound like that. I'm not gonna do this, and that. And they were like, yeah, that's fine with us. You can stay as you want, because the way for us to stay authentic is that we always just did what we wanted to do, what feels right, because then you never have to be ashamed of what you're doing. So the next steps right now is that there's an online voting for 1 week or something from February 24th on. It's going to be geo-blocked, so it's only for people from Germany, so only German IP addresses. And you can vote from each IP address, from your mobile, your tablet, whatever, but you need to come from Germany. And then there's a show on March 3, and after, when all artists, it's going to be, we're 9 different artists in the preliminary, such a hard word, in the preliminary decision show.
Yeah.
Preliminary decision show. And we're 9 artists. Then when all 9 artists have played, there's a time window of 15 minutes where you can call for your fave artist.
Okay.
20 times max. Also just German numbers, because it's a German.
Well, there's a lot of Germans that listen to this channel and podcast. So Germans that are listening, make sure you get on it.
And the third part is like there's an international jury from, I don't know how many people from how many countries, but they also have can throw in points. And then all these things are being collected, like online voting, the phone calls and the jury. And then if we are going to Liverpool or not. And if not, then we're just looking forward to a great tour with Iron Maiden.
I'm
relaxed.
While we're talking here, I'm just searching, because I got to be honest, I don't even know who are there any groups I would know that are also in the preliminaries for this from Germany?
Maybe there's one girl. She's a singer from some kind of folk medieval thing. Patty Gurdy.
Okay. I knew that. Yeah. Okay.
She did a lot with the guys from Subway to Sally or Feuerschwanz and so on. But all the others, all right. And then there's one German Schlager pop singer,
Yes.
It's a very, very German thing. I'm not even sure if there's an English word for Schlager, which I knew before, but all the others, No, most of them are very, very young.
Yeah.
So there's some singers, and I really like all of them. It's all great songs,
Yeah.
and some of them are really just like 21 or something.
Oh, wow.
So when I had my first band, they were not even born yet. So
yeah, dude. I mean, I remember, I think it was last year's, because the hype around Electric Callboy for last year's was so big that I actually woke up the morning they were announcing like the preliminaries to watch it, and I was like, I think I've told you about this, but I was really rooting for the guys, and I was kind of upset. I was like, wow, they're not even in here. And then there was one group that came up that I remember being like, this sounds like mainstream American Christian rock music. And somebody in my Discord, one of the Germans, is like, look closer at that video again. And I looked again, and it's you. And I was like, wait, what? So
yeah, I was playing the cello there in this thing, because this song was written and produced in my studio.
Yeah, so, that's awesome.
Yeah. But that's not the reason we're in there this year. So it's not like I had some connections.
Yeah, I didn't think that at all.
I stayed, but some think that, but I really stayed very much in the background there. I was just helping out the guys, because they were like, we need one person more on stage, and I helped a little with the production. So I was like, I'm just gonna go with you, but I really stayed in the background. I just didn't even tell one person on site that I'm having a band or something. So
yeah, I mean, it's super cool. Like I'm so excited for you guys, and like the more I think about it too, I'm like, I this could work out. Like it's because I think I read before we started. Sorry, the cat keeps returning.
No, this is a different one. So now I have.
Oh, you have two.
Yeah. So there you go.
I think I read before we started that 6 out of the last 7 Eurovisions, Germany has either ranked last or second to last. So I was like, yeah, like this could be. I mean, if you're talking about performance and the visuals and everything, I mean. Now, one thing I do want to ask you, because I might be confused on the rules of Eurovision. I always thought Eurovision had to be like a brand new original song that was never released, but you guys are using Blood and Glitter, so obviously that's not true.
It was like that for a long time, but it changed a couple years ago, because last year Electric Callboy would have gone to Eurovision with Pump It.
Yeah, and that was
also released.
Yeah.
They changed it. I don't know when, but the rule for this year is the song can't be older than September 2022, I guess.
Okay.
So yeah.
So it could have been released. It just can't be like an old song.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it needs to be your own song. It can't be a cover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's just say, March 3rd comes through, you guys get selected. What's the next step from then? Then it's just on to Liverpool and performances?
Let's not say that.
Okay, let's not. I'm more...
Okay. I know. I don't want to be unpolite, but really, I don't even allow myself of thinking that way, because I feel like I'm not... No.
Totally.
I'm so sure we're not gonna make it. Although, of course, I hope it, but I don't want to jinx it. I was like, no, let's ignore. You know what I did? I booked a hotel at the Baltic Sea for the time of Liverpool.
Oh, no way!
It was like I'm gonna go on vacation.
Yeah.
And if for whatever reason we're going to Liverpool, I can cancel the hotel. But I booked a hotel. I'm like, and so I have plans. Right now I can say I don't even have time for Liverpool. I'm going on vacation.
Yeah. I mean, really the reason I'm asking honestly more is not to like hype you up or anything. It's just an American that's curious about how this works, because we did the American Song Contest here this year that was put together by the producers of Eurovision. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was so bad. Like it didn't have the same atmosphere and energy and vibe as Eurovision does. And some of the picks were so interesting. Like every state in US territory sent in a pick, and most of them were unheard of, but you had like Michael Bolton represented Massachusetts, I think. And it was like Macy Gray represented Ohio. And I think Cisco was in there from like DC or something. And I'm like, this is kind of why. And none of those artists like made it far. It was all the unknowns that nobody knew that actually made it to like the finals and stuff. but
Oh,
it
that's
was,
interesting. I didn't even know that there is something, and it's also produced by the same guys that Eurovision do.
yeah,
So
this was the first
yeah.
year they did it. And it, unlike Eurovision, this lasted longer. Like this was it was the whole summer. They wanted a
Mhm.
TV event, so it lasted the whole
Yeah, of
summer.
course.
But it was like, it was very stereotypical. It was like all the southern states were sending in country artists and stuff. And like, there was just, we watched a lot of it on my Twitch, and I was just like, this doesn't capture the same spirit that Eurovision has. Like it's very Americanized. It's like Snoop Dogg was the host of it and
Yeah.
stuff. Like it just didn't have the same vibe at all. So like, I think if I remember right, this year is the first year ever that they're actually going to broadcast Eurovision on like regular TV in the States.
All right. Okay.
So I'm like stoked
Might
about
be.
that.
I just know it's the biggest TV show in the world besides Super Bowl, which is kind of wow. So, but really, I'm really trying not to think about it because
for sure.
it's making me mad. I'm just like, especially because Eurovision is this semi-playback event, so the music is playback. And the vocals are live. Nothing. I can't trick anything. No autotune, whatever. It's like our rock shows where it's just me doing the stuff, and it's like wow. So it's and the song Blood and Glitter. I'm starting the song just me alone before the piano even comes in. So I'm having some kind of tuning tone in my ears. So I get the right key. So I'm not like in the middle of nowhere because I don't have perfect pitch. But that's going to be hard. It's not like the show begins and I can be on stage for 10 seconds and kind of get used to it. It's like out of the blue, it's out of the red. It's blood and glitter. And there we are. It's like, wow, it's my heart rate right now already just here. It's not, it's 10 days until then. It's like, wow.
It's interesting. I love talking about these TV performances because you're in the music industry, you know how it works. I'm in the music industry, I know how it works. But this same thing comes up with the Super Bowl every year. Like every time there's a halftime performance, everybody that wants to hate on everything on the internet is like, this is tracked. And I'm like, well, of course it is. It's on the biggest stage that's going to be on TV this year. This is not 100% live. Now, you can easily tell when somebody's vocals are actually live in the mix. That's why I thought it was weird that this year Rihanna was the halftime performer and people are like, she's lip syncing. I was like, no, she's in there. There's just a lot of backing tracks with it. And that's normal for events like that. And I don't know why people make such a big deal about it.
Well, the thing why it's just fair for Eurovision is the following. Right nowadays, you have many electronic acts. So you have like electro artists with vocals maybe. And the typical electro track is nothing you can just reproduce with a couple of instruments. So it's coming from a computer.
Yeah.
So, and of course, this will, and for people out there who don't have a clue about like audio technical things, like it's so much easier to push play on an electro track than to get like 30 microphones on a band with like, in our case, 1.5 drum sets and guitar, bass, and all those signals all together. Compared to the electro track, it's gonna sound much less good.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. So I think for Eurovision, to make it fair, you only have like, music is playback and then comes the vocals. So you have the same kind of level, the same kind of quality level of the playback. And then, the singer is kind of the person who decides it's then. But I think it's just fair.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree with that. I agree with what you're saying. And the whole track thing has been like such a wild debate lately because I will fully admit when I was a teenager and I didn't know how music actually worked, I had that mentality. I was like, oh, if you can't play it live, you need a track. So you're a bad musician. And now that I'm older and I've been in the industry, I realize how ignorant I was to it. And the big debate right now is I don't know if it was a big thing in Europe, but Falling in Reverse had to cancel a show because their track rig and their laptops got sent to the wrong venue. And all these old school metalheads came out of the woodworks and were like, if you can't do a show without your tracks, then you're not a real musician and you're a piece of shit. And
I didn't hear about that, but it's the same for us. We always have this sixth band member, but it's we have a keyboardist on stage, but he's only playing things that are actually like something that a human being would do on keys, like piano and organ and blah. But all those sound effects and weird electronic beats and whatever are coming from the tracks. But the most important thing for us is all this, the click that we hear and all the things, it's coming from the track. So that's what's keeping everything together. And we can play without the tracks, but since tracks are like, it's our sixth band member. It's not just something that comes on top, which is kind of nice. It holds certain elements together. That's the way we work. That's the way we always worked. It would be weird to play it without. So,
And that's, I think people don't realize that I would estimate 95% of touring bands are using track rigs. I would say it's that high. And then, like you brought up, click tracks. With MIDI technology nowadays too. Like when we used Axe-Fx rigs on the road, we programmed all the guitar changes in it.
All the guitar changes, sometimes even lights.
Yeah, lights as well. So I always think that's funny because I even saw people online talking about the whole track thing. And I saw some friends of mine who I know are like diehard Nightwish fans that were totally like, if a band has to use tracks, then they're not a real band. I was like, you realize your favorite band has to use tracks. They couldn't.
You listen to that orchestra, that choir. And I'm not saying anything bad about Nightwish. They're fucking great. But you need to, maybe people understand that better if you would explain to them, for a band which is used to that, it would be the same if you would say like, hey, we don't have a drum set. Can your drummer maybe just air drum or beatbox? Or let's say we don't have a PA. There's no speakers, but maybe we can play it on an acoustic guitar in a stadium. So it's the same kind of thing. If you don't have that, of course, there's always a workaround, but it's going to be so different that it might not going to work in that place where
it's just I think the tracks thing is just that old school mentality from a lot of people, because if you look at the history of tracks and playback too, there were bands in the 70s using that, like The Who, notoriously. They had to bring out tape decks and stuff, but they were using background tracks. Yeah,
Queen were one of the first bands who really had like real big tape machines, like with these kind of tapes. Those thick ones on stage was amazing. Hey, listen, I need to go in 5 minutes.
I was actually about to wrap this up because we've been doing.
But we've been talking nearly 2 hours. What's going on?
I know, and for people that you got to think when we do these, you're in Central European time. It's almost midnight there, so I'm gonna let you get going.
All good. Good.
But before I do let you go, I just again, for any of the Germans that are listening, March 3rd is when the Eurovision preliminaries are. Make sure you get your votes in and check all that out. And then, as we already talked, your latest album, Blood and Glitter, also out. I actually pre-ordered my vinyl last night because I saw that it's available to pre-order now in the web store.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
It'll eventually be up here somewhere. So
Great.
But Chris, it is always fantastic talking to you, man. Thank you for taking the time to do this.
Thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, and hopefully when you guys do make it to the US, like again, let me know if I can be of any help. And
right now we're sorting out things, and it looks really good for February. So
cool.
I'd love to work with you.
Yeah, it'd be a blast, dude. I'm enjoying all these German bands that are coming over and want me to come help them out. So let's go, man. But again, thank you so very much. It is always a pleasure talking to you. I hope you have a great rest of the night, because I know it's way later there for you than it is for me. So
it is. Thank you very much. Bye.
Awesome. Take care, man. Well, one thing I never thought I'd be discussing on this podcast was the average male penis size. That actually happened in this episode, but this was such a great conversation. And I really want to thank Chris once again for joining us on this, because, he's a very intelligent person, and there are a lot of things that come up in conversation that I can even learn from him. And I did in this one, in the case of learning how Spotify and stuff works. I've been in the music industry for years, and I had no idea that Spotify only takes non-album singles for playlists. That's kind of crazy. But hearing the stories about, you know, the Iron Maiden tour and meeting those guys and stuff like that is just, that's just such cool stuff, man. And, you know, the talks about the marketing for the album was really eye-opening, especially with how honest he was, saying that like some people at the record label were for it and some people were against. It's really cool. But the big thing right now, again, March 3rd, the preliminaries for Germany's entries for Eurovision are going to be kicking off. By the time this podcast comes out, voting should be open for the early voting and ballots and stuff. So again, I will have a link to that stuff in this YouTube video. If you're watching on YouTube, go vote for Lord of the Lost, man. I would love nothing more than to actually see those guys perform at Eurovision. Like, I think it would be awesome. But again, this was a blast, man. I am already trailing off with my mind, thinking about all the things I need to pack. I'm like looking around the room as I'm filming this right now. But it'll be interesting because, you know, a lot of tours I do, I'm able to bring my like giant work box and in a bigger suitcase. And on this, I'm not really doing that. I'm packing pretty light. So I have to be really kind of frugal with what I'm bringing, but make sure I have everything I need. But since I need to get back to that, I'm going to wrap this up and get going. As a reminder, again, video versions of this podcast are available on YouTube. You can go to youtube.com/TankTheTech. Also available on Spotify, Google, Apple, everywhere else that you want to listen to podcasts. I've got merchandise if you want to help support the channel. I can't even remember the link off the top of my head. I'm terrible at this. I think it's TankTheTechMerch.com, but the link for that will be in the description of the YouTube video. And if anybody listening wants to keep up with me while I'm on tour, I do post to Instagram often, and I do have other social medias. My handle on most everything online is @TankTheTech, but again, you can check the description to this video on YouTube, and I'll have all those links and stuff. But until next time, this was episode 22 of the Back Lounge podcast. I've got some other ones lined up, but we won't be able to get to those until I get home from these tour dates. So, man, I'm looking forward to it. I hope that you guys are ready for some stories when I get back. But until our next one, wherever you are in the world, be safe, be kind to each other, and thank you for listening to the Back Lounge podcast.